First impressions are so important in the real world because upon meeting someone new, you're already judging them solely from 7 seconds of interaction. In the context of Dragon Ball, however, a villain's debut is debatably more important than the villain itself, since it must be memorable and striking enough for the audience to invest in them. Let's be honest, your favourite villain's debut is a big factor into why they're even your favourite to begin with, so let's take it from the top. This first debut I'm discussing might be a bit of a curveball, but Raditz has put the whole series on its head for the better. When he lands on Earth, we're instantly forming questions in our brain like, what is that green accessory on his face? Or who in the world is this Kakarot geezer, which pulls in our interest? The initial question's answered when he reads a power level of 5 from the farmer, but when the latter fires the shotgun, Raditz seizes the pellet and full on flicks it right back at the farmer, murdering him on sight. Once his scouter goes off again in search of this Kakarot, Raditz stumbles upon none other than Piccolo, who assumes Goku's approaching him, to which both villains are left disappointed at the result. The alien reads his power level, seeing him as mere fodder, but this triggers Piccolo, firing a key wave at such short range. You'd think as the main villain of OG Dragon Ball it would do life-threatening damage to Raditz, as this same move forced Goku to dodge, knowing how dangerous it was. But nope, he tanks it head on with no signs of injury and calls that attack nothing more than a dust show. Yep, this is exactly how you write the new villain to eclipse the fearsome one of old. The fun doesn't stop there when Raditz picks up another reading in the distance. It's apparently the greatest one on Earth, assuming it has to be Kakarot, and in the very last panel of the chapter, the alien shouts if he's gone and lost his Saiyan pride, to which we get the answer to our Kakarot question. Whoever read from chapter 1 up till this back in the day was straight losing their marbles at this cliffhanger, and I'm sure during the wait for the next issue, people were making whole theories on the subject, trying to figure out how Raditz can know of Goku when he's an alien. After he reunites with Goku, the next chapter feels like an exposition dump of our hero's real heritage, but what makes it entertaining is seeing everyone's reaction to Raditz being related to him, and more importantly, the priceless faces that Krillin, Roshi and Bulma make when the Saiyan explains the tails and the full moon are when their race unveiled their true power. Everything, and I mean everything, we were led to believe about Goku being some mutated human was a flat out lie, emphasizing how the stories evolved entirely from what we've read before. Finally, to big up Raditz's strength, he swats away Krillin with a whip from his tail, and as Goku's about to kill him if he moves any closer, Big Bro just humbles him with a diabolical knee to his abdomen, writhing in agony before kidnapping Gohan to join the Saiyan conquest. To be fair, Goku kinda deserved it for pulling out the thumb pose of all things on his only sibling. The next debut on this list was so good that the manga switched genres from shonen to horror thanks to none other than Cell. When Gohan discovered the cocoon sitting near the time machine, it had the god of Earth sweating straight bullets at this realization, and following the news reports of Gingertown civilians vanishing in a snap, Kami eventually agrees to assimilate with Piccolo, accepting that the planet needs a powerful warrior instead of a deity. We've been teased of these two becoming whole again throughout the story, so witnessing it finally happen completes Piccolo's beautiful character arc, now known as the Nameless Namekian once more. The scene after is horrifying but impactful. First thing we see is entire roads littered with clothes, no corpses whatsoever before Piccolo arrives at Gingertown. I love how the moment is filled with pure silence which heightens certain minute noises, like the slow drips of water and what seems to be the sound of a body being dragged. The most spine-chilling part is noticing the silhouette of this monster lurking in the shadows with its tail out, and when Piccolo is approached by the enemy, we're hit with the most unique character design of the whole show, piquing our tension and unease by the end of the episode. Perfect Cell's design as well. Perfect. But if the imperfect one's your favourite, I don't blame you at all. Anywho, what shocks Piccolo most is the key the monster possesses, and as he's interrupted by the old man offering up money to be saved, the Namekian tells the monster to let him go no matter how pathetic his life is, assuming it doesn't understand him. Cell complies with his request, however in a blink of an eye it readies its tail, stabbing the old man in the spine. And brother, watching this guy being sucked dry made me wanna vomit. it, especially the noises of that slurping tail, and the man gradually becoming a lump of aging flesh prior to being fully absorbed. No skin or bones, just his suit remains of a stab mark. We don't stop there, cause Cell proceeds to call the Namekian Demon King Piccolo, which had him going bonkers in how this monster could possibly know that name. So to scare him even further, Cell releases his ki for everyone to sense, and they're all lost for words at why they can sense Frieza, his dad, Vegeta, Piccolo, and also Goku all the way from Ginger Town. Gohan got so frightened that he had to quickly check his father didn't stealth his way out of Kame House or something, and once we return to Piccolo's POV, the monster flat out says he's the Namekian's brother. This probably left first time readers utterly bamboozled at this reveal, on par with Raditz declaring the same thing to Goku. But what's so hilarious about this is that Cell's just lying this whole time. I never realised how much of a troll he was in his own arc. This ain't a Piccolo vid, but I need to give him credit cause he powers up as well to push Cell back, stating he got the wrong person. And I love how the Namekian's thankful for the monster killing everyone in the area as he has no reason to restrain himself, before blasting Cell to Kingdom Come, destroying all of Ginger Town in the process. If that entrance scared you as a kid as much as it did for me, please do subscribe. We'll move on to Cell interrupting Piccolo and 17's fight. This may not classify as a debut, but I still think this scene goes insane. Specifically the moment the monster flexes his energy to everyone. The echoes of his scream along with the screeches of the very souls he absorbed across the cities is so disturbing to hear. It really hammers home the horror aspect of Cell down to a T. Also, when Piccolo's petrified at the sheer number of sacrifices required to fuel Cell's power, the android waves away the negative connotation of the word sacrifice, exclaiming those tormented souls should feel honoured to be part of a greater cause in furthering his strength. Cell's debut and demeanour is pretty much a 10 out of 10, nailing the horror vibe, but the next one's the polar opposite, being much more creative and wacky, aka Majin Buu's. His debut was so underrated, and you wanna know why I'm a fan of it? It's cause it subverts all expectations of both the characters and thus the audience. Due to Goku's fight with Vegeta, the wizard Babidi collected more than enough energy for the Majin's resurrection, which reduced Shin to an utter shambles. In a last-ditch effort, Gohan shoots a Kamehameha directly for the shell itself. However, the beam does a whopping 0 damage, allowing for the shell to open up, reviving the dreaded Majin Buu. Babidi assumes it has to be some sort of misinput, whereas Shin's confident the hybrid's last attack evaporated Buu entirely, prompting him to bring out his anger to finish this, but all of a sudden Gohan senses an ever so rising ki, and once he looks up there's a pink smoke brewing up in the sky, meaning Babidi's plan was a success all along in resurrecting the Majin. Till now, the villains of Dragon Ball have had such menacing designs, so seeing Buu right here puts a spanner in the works. Like, how can the final villain of the series possibly be this bubblegum with a 5-digit BMI? Even Babidi and Dabura were asking themselves what on earth did they just revive? While Shin is still petrified, talking about how he'll never forget that terrifying face. Brother, are we looking at the same person? Buu's the goofiest we've ever seen. The Kai's probably misread the Majin's power exactly like how it did with the Saiyans. Trust me, Buu couldn't even hurt a fly. What am I saying? Buu was a menace even in this form, especially whenever he makes that creepy grin. The Majin's diabolical acts didn't stop there with how he was playing the symbols using Shin's head like that one monkey in Toy Story, blasting Gohan across the continent with a single ball, and most notably how he did the Bora dirty by turning him into gingerbread to fill his belly. Making this debut so chaotic was a great choice in displaying Buu's strength, and it really stands out from the other ones I've discussed. We all know how menacing the other earth-busting version of Buu is, so I won't go into too much depth, but it's interesting he took 2 attempts to blow up the planet and would have succeeded the first time if it weren't for the prince. Furthermore, once Kid Buu charges up the move a second time, listen to the desperation in Goku's voice.
No! Why? Why are you doing this? There'll be nothing left at all! Please, Buu!
If that doesn't encapsulate the outright fear of this scene, I don't know what does. And the fact that Buu's only response was to grin proudly at the Saiyan's plea just cements his position on the infamous round table. Z's villains have some amazing debuts, but this can also be said for Dragon Ball Super with two enemies that jump right out. Firstly, we get the return of future Trunks to begin the episode as a means to hook us in with someone familiar, and he's with future Bulma, who spent an entire year gathering this blue fuel for the time machine so they can return to the past. The question is, why would they want to? Didn't Trunks beat the androids already? But suddenly the building's bombarded with ki blasts, and we see an ominous figure with surging red eyes grab hold of Trunks' mother. She begs for her son to escape already, and in one of the darkest scenes in Super, the creature shoots a ki ball which decimates the whole building, murdering future Bulma just like that. That's how you start an episode. Not gonna lie, Super wouldn't get as much hate if this was the beginning of the series instead of retelling Battle of Gods. Anywho, we get a small glimpse of future Trunks' world, such as your typical dystopian darkness, and the fact both him and Mai had nothing left but rations of cat food to eat, really highlighting how this threat they're facing is somehow worse than the androids. At least with them, the sky didn't look so bleak during the extinction of humanity. Agreeing to use the time machine to get help from the Z fighters, Trunks and Mai head off the Capsule Corp on foot to keep a low profile, but as he's about to enter, the hybrid realizes the creatures detected their ki, and no joke. A whole tornado summoned, bringing forth the ominous figure once more to end their existences for good. Even with his sword, Trunks is no match for the demon who sets whole fires ablaze across the city using its ki blasts, so Mai orders the hybrid to get a move on, deciding to be the bait for his escape. However, just like the last person with a shotgun, no amount of ammo was gonna save her from this world-ending foe, who lands a clean bullseye to have Mai hitting a good 10 seconds of airtime before eventually collapsing on the ground. Another one falls victim to the demon's terror, leaving Trunks in utter despair, and in the last few seconds of the episode, the flames clear, unveiling its true identity, not a mindless spawn of the underworld, but a man who stands on top of his destruction in dark gi. And this isn't just any person, no, the one responsible for this chaos was none other than Goku of all people, remarking that today he'll extinguish the entire human race. If you were there when it first aired, some in the community theorized Black to be a proper evil Goku that didn't hit his head, or weirdly enough, a few thought he must be some version of Goten. In hindsight, it's funny we were so wide off the mark, especially because Black has an actual Patara on his left ear, and the way he describes the Saiyans as a fascinating race is such an odd thing to say, almost as if he's not one himself. Let's not gloss over the saddest part of all this. The very last face Bulma saw before her death was that of her childhood friends. Imagine being in her position where you saw your friend die of disease with your own eyes, and suddenly you see their face again after all these years, thinking there's been a miracle, but in fact the man wearing it is the most sinister being of the universe, committing heinous crimes with the body of the very hero you befriended as a teenager. Do you know how heartbroken Bulma must have felt during Black's year of massacre? Like, I'd still prefer Gohan Black for the Trunks dynamic, but the emotional implications of Zamasu taking Goku's body are quite overlooked. As for the manga, it plays out similar to the anime where Trunks stood no chance against the deity, so Mai begins shooting the oil barrels to buy the hybrid enough time to flee. Sadly, Obi-Wan's go-to strategy did not help Mai from dropping face first into the nearby rubble, but when Trunks goes to save her, she's lost consciousness laying dead in his arms. Black approaches the mourning hybrid where the oil spilt from the barrels begin to ignite, growing ever so higher, taller than even the tearful Trunks, and on the other side of the flame, it illuminates the god into view with an unsettling grin, promising it's the end of the line. Personally, I think the anime's entrance was better, but I have to give it to the manga for showing off Black's superiority in battle. As Trunks lobs a good chunk of concrete at the god, he evades it by pulling off instant transmission to elbow the hybrid's neck, and right after, Black really told this man, if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. To get killed by your day one weapon would have been a devious play by Zamasu of the highest order. Anywho, the latter manga exclusive supervillain with a jaw-dropping debut is, as you can guess, Moro. Not even 3 pages in, we get a grasp of how dangerous he is as the Kais themselves threw hands with the goat, just like with Kid Buu. And whilst the pair continue to dodge the incoming meteor shower, Moro demonstrates a fraction of his abilities by turning to Saturn, draining every living organism of its energy down to the final drop before eventually completing his 5 a day. Part of his nutrients came from a literal Eevee minding its own business, and once its life force is stolen, look how desaturated and lifeless the Pokemon looks by the end of the absorption. Dear lord, imagine how soul crushing it would have been for Serena to see that. Thankfully, the Grand Supreme Kai puts a stop to the goat's nefarious plans by sealing his magic away for the Galactic Patrol to lock him up in their very own prison, and all is good until recently when Moro regained his magic back a few years ago to break out his cell. This leads to Goku deciding it's best to search for Moro by locking onto his key, and in no time the Saiyan finds the Devourer chilling there, now with beads of sweat dripping down his face. We finally get a peep of what Moro actually looks like, but in such a nerve-wracking page of the manga, the goat proceeds to smile at the current situation before staring right back at Goku, jump scaring him to bits. First off, can we appreciate how unique Moro looks in his first appearance? What sets his design apart from other DB villains has got to be the overgrown beard of his, highlighting the similarities to a proper wizard, and second, spooking Goku, the most carefree person of the show, to the point where he begs Vegeta to not search for him shows how marvellous this entrance is, instantly telling us the reader that Moro's not to be messed with. The description Goku gives of the goat's key is also a layer of horror as well, articulating it as a whole lot of people screaming in pain. You mean to tell me after 10 million years the Eevee soul is still suffering as we speak? Yeah, Moro, yours is on par with Cell's. Lastly, I haven't given any love to GT yet, so let's talk about how slept on Syn Shenron's debut is. For some context, Goku's just beaten Ice Shenron with the Dragon Fist, however frustrated he can't treat his blindness with mere water, Nova hands him the medicine for his eyes, desiring to have a fair fight later. I absolutely adore the Saiyan and 4-star Dragon's bonding moment, since that specific ball felt sacred to Goku from the beginning. However, this friendship is rudely interrupted by an instant death beam which shatters the antidote, going right through Nova on its travels. Syn's fed up of waiting, and there's something so cold about the manner in which he strolls out the waterfall, I can't put my finger on it. Anywho, the dragon calls the other one a failure for refusing to murder that injured monkey and shoots another death beam right for Goku, where just in time Nova shields the Saiyan at the cost of his own life, saddened he can never settle the score fair and square. Hearing the orb roll signals to enrage Goku for Syn cutting down his own kind like an animal, however the latter retorts that all this chaos unfolding is thanks to the Saiyan. The birth of the Shadow Dragons, his fault. The Earth being in danger, also his fault, only because our heroes couldn't help to overuse the Dragon Balls for every little thing, exclaiming Goku has no right to ask more favours. Off topic, but why did Syn feel the need to rest his spiky chin on Goku's shoulder? Like he can hear you perfectly fine. Anyway, the Saiyan acknowledges what Elder Kai said about relying on the orbs, feeling guilty for the numerous times he used them, so Syn tests his honesty, yelling if Goku's truly sorry, he'll apologise with his life before booming the whole city off the map by simply standing dead still. You know a GT villain debut's brilliant when they have Super Saiyan 4 looking pathetic. Syn was having too much fun in landing such a foul combo with blood gushing everywhere, and even worse, the dragon's death beams had this monkey sprinting on the roller coaster track like prime Subway surfers. By now, he's called Goku a monkey quite a few times this fight, but it's so much deeper than that. Guess what wish gave birth to this particular dragon? It was the one made by Popo to revive everyone killed by Frieza and his men in the Namek saga. You heard that right, the only wish that had anything to do with Frieza brought life to the most racist dragon of them all. No, that cannot be a coincidence. No way the Emperor's influence was so strong that his racist tendencies were passed down to the Dragon Balls themselves. Overall, debuts are a cornerstone in writing great DB villains, so hopefully you now see the beauty in the craft of making them.